All right, welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. In this chapter, we are building a content management system with object-oriented programming. Now, let's just get one thing out of the way here. I have my air conditioner still on, and I know that's going to be annoying and add extra sound to the next few videos I'm about to shoot. But it is super hot and humid in here, and I'm having a really hard time breathing, so I feel really short of breath. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to leave my AC on, and we will keep plugging away. If you guys would like some of this awesome merch, like this Free Skills hat, or even this Free Skills shirt I got on here, or even a mug, I got a Free Skills mug you can get. You can go to freeskills.life and you can get some of that merch. All right, the other thing you can do to help me out is you can comment, like, and subscribe to whatever platform you're watching this on. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and get some work done. Now, it's a little hard to figure out where we should start in this project because there's so much to do early on before we could see a lot of progress. So I think what we're going to do is just get started and see where we get to. One thing that we didn't do in the last video is we didn't go ahead and push. So go ahead and open up your terminal here and type a git branch. Now your editor probably won't have this part that tells you what branch you're on, so you can type git branch and you will see that you are on main. What I'm going to do is I have different branches that I'm going to put, and so the last video was the end of video 4, and so what we're going to do is on my GitHub channel for this CMS repo, you can check out whatever branch and see where we get to at the end. So if something is wrong at the end of your video, find that branch on GitHub and you can compare the code for where we left off to your code and hopefully find some syntax errors or what have you. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch for me to work on. You don't have to do this if you don't want, but I am currently on the main branch here, so I'm going to go ahead and type git checkout -b, and this is going to be video 5. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and now I am on the branch called v5. So anything that I change on here will be on v5. And then the next thing we're going to do is we want to go ahead and start building out some of our index.php. Now, like I said before, this index.php file is going to be the entry point. Let me just make this a little bit bigger here. It's going to be the entry point for our entire application. So I'm going to close this article.php. We don't need that anymore. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete that file. That file was only used for demonstration purposes. So now we should be left with the htaccess, the index.php, your license, and the readme. All right, so one thing that we could do here is go ahead and get rid of this h2 here in the index, and let's go ahead and just pretend like this is going to be the beginning of our application. So we're going to open up some PHP tags, and the first thing that I want to do here is we're going to go ahead and start our session by typing session start. So that'll be the first thing we do at the top of the application. The next thing that we want to be able to do, we're going to skip down a few lines here, and we're going to define a couple constants that we can use with that throughout our application. So the first one that we want to set up, we're going to use define here, and this is how you create a constant in PHP. We're going to create a constant called proot, and that's going to be our project root. It's going to actually, what we're going to do is define it with a magic constant inside of PHP. It's double underscores here, so it looks like one big one, but it's 2 underscores, dir underscore underscore. And what this is going to do is it's going to get the root of wherever this index.php is. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go slow, so I'm going to show you every step of the way. So let's go ahead now and var dump that constant. So we can var dump p root just like that, and we'll hit save, and let's go back and refresh here, and now you can see we have a string, and it's /opt /lamp /htdocs /cms. So this gets us to the root of wherever our index.php file is, and this is going to be helpful because when we need a specific path to a file, we can use this and have the exact path on our server to wherever this index.php file is. That will be really helpful. So the next one that we want to define here, go ahead and define one called ds. And this is going to be a constant called directory separator. And we don't have to set this up. Oops, I got to spell that correctly. We don't have to set this up as another constant, but I want to because this is a lot to type out, and so we're going to be using our paths with this ds. Now, what is a directory separator? Well, a directory separator is going to be, for example, on a Linux server, when you're typing a path, it will be something like, you know, core / MVC or whatever / and so on and so forth. But on a Windows server, this could be a backslash. So it'd be core / MVC / index or whatever. And so we want this to be compatible no matter what the directory separator is for the operating system. And so we will be using that, if I remember. We'll try to use that all the time. And if I save this now and we var dump that, we're going to get a string, and for us it is going to be the /. So that's all that is going to do. And you'll see how we're going to use that a little bit later. But we're just going to go define that now so it's available to us for the rest of the application. The next thing that I think I want to do is let's go ahead and get some of our directory structure laid out. So let's add a new folder here in the root, and we're going to create a folder called app. And then I'd like to click another one and add another folder here. Let's add one called core. So now we're going to have an app and a core. And what I'd like to do is put all of our classes that we build for our application in this core, and then our models, our views, and our controllers are going to go inside this app. So go ahead and select this app, right click on it and add a new folder in there, and create one called controllers. And yep. And then what we're going to do is right click on that again on the app and create one called views. And right click on app again and create a folder called models. Okay, now the other thing that we'll put in here is we'll put maybe our styles and JavaScript files and things like that in here. So let's go ahead now, and also let's create a new folder called uploads. We're going to store our uploads in that directory, and a new folder, and we'll call that one CSS. So we'll put our CSS in that directory there. Let's see. So I think that's good for the app. Inside the core, we're just going to have a bunch of files in there. So let's go ahead and create our first file in the core, and we're going to create a file called config, and that's a capital C.php. All right, so create config.php, and what we're going to do here is we are going to open some PHP tags, skip down a couple lines, and we're going to start using namespaces. So our namespace for every file inside this core directory is going to be, it's just going to be core. Okay, just like that, all uppercase. So give this a namespace of core. Now, I'll try to explain a little bit more about namespacing and stuff as we go, but just go ahead and do this, and it needs to be up top here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a class, and we're going to call this class config. All right. So, and that's a capital C. We're going to do all of our class names with capital letters. So, capital C here. And inside of here, we're going to create a couple, we're going to create a private static config, and this is going to be a static property, and it's going to be an array. So go ahead and open and close some square brackets here. So we're going to create an array here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a key called version, and this version, we'll do a fat arrow there, And then our version is starting out, we're just going to do 0.0.1. Okay, we'll get a very low version number, and we'll explain more about what the version is going to do later on. We're also going to define one called root_dir, and this root directory is going to be the path that are on the server that our project is stored in. So what we did is we created this inside of a directory called CMS, just like this, and we'll do another / there. So what we're going to do here is let's make a few comments. So we'll do 2 / here, and we'll just give yourself a comment that this will likely be just / on a live server. But on our example install, it's going to be this full path here. So on your live server, if it's just in a root, it would be like this. But we installed it in a directory called a CMS. So that's that. The next thing that we'll do here is we will create. We're going to go ahead and set up a key called default controller. And the default controller for us is just going to be blog, just like that. We'll also set up a default layout. Now this is configuration for our application, and we'll see what we're going to use all this configuration for as we use it, and I'll define it and come back and look at it. But let's just go ahead and follow along for now. The default layout is just going to be default. And then we have a default site title, and right here you can put whatever you want. I'm going to put free skills as my default site title here. And then now we're going to put some of our database configuration stuff. So put db_host, and on our local machines here, it's going to be 127.0.0.1. And then we'll do db name, and we called our database just lowercase cms. So if you called it something else, make sure you set that accordingly. And then our user, by default, if you just have a default example install here, it is root. And then the last thing we need, well, there's 2 more. We need a db password. And this db password by default is just an empty string. So we'll just do an empty string there. And then let's do login cookie name. And right here, just go ahead and do a random string with some numbers, letters, no special characters or anything like that. Let's just do something like that. Make it, a good 12 or so characters, but just make it random. So I'm going to put some comments after all of these, since this will be our configuration files. But before I do that, I'd like to clean this array up a little bit to make it look a little nicer. So what I can do is look at the farthest to the right arrow, and that's these blogs, the blog right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to tab this over. I'm going to tab this over until it lines up with that farthest out one here. And I'm going to do that to all of these. Now, unfortunately, this is actually further out, so let's go ahead and move these. Come on now. All I'm trying to do is line these arrows up. Oh my gosh. Not very used to. Atom is much nicer than this. It will just help you do this by using tabs. But apparently this is not going to be easy. So I'm just going to use some spaces here to line this stuff up. You don't have to do this, by the way. In some instances, I think this looks a little nicer, and especially for configuration. I'm doing this so that I can easily see what the keys are over here to the left, and then I can see what the values are all right here to the right. And then that'll also allow me to kind of line up the comments here. So this is going to be the default home controller, default layout that is used. I misspelled free skills because I'm dumb. Default site title. Now some of these are stupid, but DB host, please use IP address, not domain. Now the reason I'm saying that is because we're going to be using PDO, and if you use a domain name here instead of the IP address, it has to do a DNS lookup, and it actually takes longer to connect to your database. So if you can use the IP address, that'll actually make each database call faster because the connection will connect without doing a DNS lookup. All right. And then this is going to be DB name, DB user, DB password, and this is going to be our login cookie name. Put a space here. All right, so this gives us some configuration that we can use throughout our application, and when we get ready to move this to a live server, we can just update this configuration to put, or if we move it to a different server, we can just update this configuration. But if you notice, this is a private property here, and although it's static, it is private, so we can't access it outside of this config. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a public static function that allows us to get these. So we're going to use get, and then we're going to pass in a key. And I'll show you how we're going to use this in a little bit, but we're going to pass in this key. And so what we're going to do is we're going to return, and this is a ternary operator. So we're going to do a ternary operator, and what we're going to do is say return array key exists. So we want to check if this key that we pass in exists in this config array, then we're going to return it. So what we can do here is if the array key exists, so the first thing is the needle, and then we do the haystack. So we're searching for the needle in the haystack here, and we are going to access this with self : because this is static, and then this property is config. So we are looking for the key, which will be here, version or root dir or DB name. We're looking for it in this array, this self config array. So that's going to access this right here. If that exists, so we can use a question mark here to say, hey, because array key exists as a built-in PHP function, and it returns a boolean of true or false. So we can use that in a ternary here, and if it evaluates to true, so this question mark, whatever comes next is what it's going to return. So we're just going to return self config, and then open and close your square brackets and pass the key in as the key of, or the index of that array. Else, so then you use a colon, and then else you can return null, and then a semicolon, and then that is our config class. So we won't need to do anything else with this config class unless I made a typo here. And this will allow us, now we're going to reference this and come back to it, but this will allow us to use these values by using the config get function and then passing in one of these keys, and it'll return these values. All right, and the reason we're doing that is because I don't want to type this stuff over and over again throughout our application. We can just use this stuff, this configuration, and then if we want to create a new website with the configuration, we could just change these values, and this will work with any of our websites. All right, so let's go back now, and let's look back at the index.php file here, and let's go ahead and let's do the How much time have I been recording? Let me check that real quick. So we're at 19 minutes now. You know what? I think what I'm gonna do is call this video done at this point. So what we'll do is just call this video. We just set up some directory structure. We created our config class here, and we got going on our index, which I'm gonna save that. And so we're not really going to be able to show much for this video just yet, but in the next video we're going to do is we're going to build an autoloader so that we don't have to manually load in all of our classes. We can build it here in this index, and then any class that we want to use throughout our application will get loaded in by default. Because well, maybe I'll show this in the next video, but if I wanted to use this config class in this index file, what I'd have to do is I'd have to do some sort of like require once, and I would have to put in like core / config.php, and then I can use that by, you know, config ::get, and then if I wanted to get the DB name, it would be like that. And this would work here. If I had this correct, this will work, but we'd have to maintain this, and we'd have to do this on every single class that we wanted to use in this file, and every single file in our application that needed to use these classes. We'd have to require each one of those. So what we're going to do is build an autoload function. We're going to use something called a PSR4 autoload paradigm to load in our classes just with namespacing, which we've started that right here with this namespace. That's going to help us. And then we're going to be able to use our use statements at the top of the files, and that will we can auto load those in. So that's it for this video, guys. I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and in the next video we're going to build our autoloader and make sure that that works. So I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.